In the Grand Canyon state of Arizona, the race for governor and the race for U.S. Senate is really sucking up a whole lot of oxygen. But everyone out there knows that violent crime in this country is one of the leading issues for voters. And when you're worried about crime in your state, you look to the Attorney General. And that race is incredibly interesting in Arizona. Joining us right now is the Republican candidate for Attorney General, Abe Hamadeh. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Thank you for having me on, Larry.
I was struck by, I was looking at a website that was collecting candidate information and candidate survey from yourself and your Democrat counterpart. And when asked about the leading issues for Arizona, you said violent crime, making sure we get the bad guys in jail, keeping them there, no more bail reform, no more criminal justice reform. Let's make sure the bad guys serve their time. Your opponent focused on climate change. This is a very different approach to the Attorney General's job, isn't it?
Yeah, you're exactly right. My opponent's top three issues are fighting climate change, abortion rights, and then saving democracy. And then my issues are border security, fighting the crime epidemic, and then fighting back against the Joe Biden administration. But that's the big difference between the Democrats and the Republicans this year. I mean, if you look all across the country, it seems like so many states are in play right now. I mean, look at Letitia James. I mean, she's totally weaponized the law up in New York as Attorney General, and it seems like that race is in play. So this is where Democrats has overplayed their hand and Republicans, we're going to be doing really well because everywhere Democratic policies have been implemented, they've led to misery and chaos, and they failed us. So, voters can see the differences right in front of their eyes. I mean, it just takes a few years for misery and chaos to come once they start releasing criminals back on our streets.
Yeah, and that is definitely happening in so many of our states and so many of our communities. So what approach do you take then as the state attorney general in terms of leading and making sure that various district attorney and state's attorneys throughout Arizona actually ensure that the bad guys get put away and kept away?
Yeah, you're exactly right. Well, here in Arizona, actually last year, the state legislature just empowered the Attorney General's office to tackle all those organized retail theft crimes, those smash and grabs that we witness where they go and raid in a store. So that's where Arizona now has empowered the AG's office to go after them because so many county attorneys are refusing to prosecute some of these low-level crimes due to a lack of resources or perhaps they're George Soros funded type of prosecutors who don't want criminals in jail. So that's where the AG's office is so critical. And that's, I'm actually honored to have the endorsement of every single law enforcement organization in the state because they ultimately recognize that without law and order, our cities turn into Gotham. And that's exactly what's been happening over the past few years.
Well, and certainly in Arizona, the lax enforcement of our border laws really loom large as well in terms of crime, but also in terms of the cost of your state to keep the schools going, the hospitals going. I think the mayor of Chicago and the mayor of New York and D.C. kind of get a little taste of that now. There's no sign that the Biden administration is ever going to enforce that border as long as they're in control. So what would you do as Attorney General of Arizona to force them to do so?
It's a great question. So I've been running on for about a year now, and everywhere I go, I've been saying we have to declare the drug cartels as terrorist organizations. Governor Abbott just did that in Texas, but here in Arizona, we have that ability to, but it just requires the state legislature to do it. Under current law, we use the U.S. Department of State's definition of what a terrorist organization is, and that's been politicized. Last year, I was actually serving in the Army overseas. I was serving in the Middle East, and we were getting missiles fired at us from the Yemen Houthi rebels. And under President Trump, they were terrorist organizations. And then when President Biden took office, he delisted them as terrorist organizations, the ones who were shooting missiles at us. So the State Department has been politicized. Here in Arizona, we know what the threat is. It's the drug cartels and their narco terrorists. So with that designation, we'll have enhanced sentencings on them, but also be able to seize their assets and go after any company or any businesses that are colluding with them.
Do you believe Secretary Mayorkas of Homeland Security has been lying about the status of the border, for that matter, lying under oath to Congress? And is it time for a new Republican majority to actually begin impeachment proceedings?
Absolutely. I mean, if you see, all of this is a direct result of the Biden administration's policies right now. And you look at Border Patrol, they have no confidence at all in the leadership right now. And 250,000 people flock in our southern border every single month is unsustainable. And I've been to the border many, many times, and what you witness is it's not these poor migrants coming across. I mean, they're paying the drug cartels $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 to smuggle them across, but they're just walking into the hands of law enforcement officers, and they're being shuttled on buses, taken across all over the country. But then the drug cartels also have the other operation going on, which is smuggling in the fentanyl. And those are done by the illegal immigrants who are crossing our border with camouflage, evading law enforcement. So the border is completely open, and it's really put a strain on local law enforcement, but also Border Patrol.
We spoke on the program earlier this week about these calls from the intelligentsia here in Washington for a COVID amnesty. Hey, we all made mistakes during the pandemic. We didn't have all the facts at our disposal. Let's just forgive and forget. You're on record now saying, forget about an amnesty, you want reckoning. How does that manifest? If you're the Attorney General, what kind of reckoning can you actually oversee with regard to the decisions that were made during the pandemic?
Well, if you look at Eric Schmidt, the Attorney General in Missouri right now, they actually just got issued where they're going to have Dr. Fauci testify under oath. So that's one aspect where we can go after them. But you're exactly right. And this is why, here in Arizona, all of our candidates have been promoting one another. We have to elect Blake Masters to the United States Senate because he's going to work with Dr. Rand Paul to go after Dr. Fauci at the federal level also. So, the COVID times, I don't want to just forget about what they did to us. Shutting down churches, schools, small businesses, allowing our loved ones to die alone at the hospital. We need to make sure this never happens again because, quite frankly, our founding fathers would be ashamed of us for what we've put up with over the past 2 years.
The actions during the pandemic is not the only thing in the rearview mirror that you're keeping your eye on. You earlier this year took to Twitter and said, my message to those who work to rob President Trump of the rigged 2020 election, your day of reckoning is coming when I take office, January 23. What do you mean? Who are you talking about, first of all? Do you know specifically who you would have a day of reckoning with? And who right now should your current Attorney General be looking into?
I think the biggest culprit is actually the legacy media and the social media sites. I mean, you just saw the other day, they just openly admitted they're working with DHS basically for a disinformation board where they're working with the government to silence and censor conservatives. Now, this is unacceptable. When you have government colluding with big tech, they basically have become agents of the state. And I am tasked as Attorney General to uphold our constitutional rights. So they are violating the First Amendment. That's what I mean when you talk about the rigged 2020 election. There was so much irregularities. If you look at here in Arizona, we had an Obama-appointed federal judge extend the voting registration deadline by 3 weeks, knowing he had no authority to do so. And in that time period before the Ninth Circuit, which is liberal circuit, struck him down 10 days later, in that time period, he had 30,000 new voters added to the voter rolls. So that's where we talk about, I want justice. I think the big tech companies right now, luckily Elon Musk took over Twitter. I think that's going to help alleviate some concerns. But big tech is colluding with the government, but it's not just them. Look at banking. Banks are now working with the government to basically suppress our Second Amendment rights by debanking gun owners and ammo manufacturers. So this is unacceptable. And the liberal left, they always try finding ways to push through their agenda.
Well, your tweet, though, has a picture of somebody in handcuffs. So that suggests criminal activity that you're going to crack down on. I mean, are you looking to make arrests with big tech for that collusion with DHS?
Well, if you look at here in Arizona, the current Attorney General just last week actually indicted, I think, about 3 or 4 other people who are ballot trafficking down in Yuma and San Luis. So, there are already indictments going on, and that's exactly what I intend to continue. I fought, here I am. I've taken that oath in the United States Army Reserve. I've served overseas. I know how precious democracy is. When we've spread democracy all around the world, rightly or wrongly, we see those images and videos of them, Iraqis or Afghans, dipping their fingers in ink, and they're so proud that they voted. Right now, we've lost confidence in our election system. So anybody who commits fraud, we will prosecute.
Yeah, on that we agree. Absolutely. We need to have some confidence in the systems that we've got here so that win or lose, we can walk away thinking at the very least it was done fair and square and transparently.
Absolutely.
Quickly, your website so anyone out there can help support you in this final stretch.
Thank you, Larry. They can go to abeforag.com, abeforag.com. I also have a very active Twitter and social media at Abraham Hamadeh.
We will be watching Arizona intently on election night, and we'll certainly be watching your race for Attorney General as well, sir. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Larry.
More to come on O'Connor Tonight.